Jason X, The Experiment, Chapter 13. The creature strapped to the table had no intellectual concept of things like paralyzing agent, nano-neutralization charge, or organic ambiguity. All he knew was that even though he wasn't frozen in quite the same way as before, he could not move, a condition that had persisted for a very long time. Not that he actually had any comprehension of time. Not as people knew it anyways. He could remember, in his way, and he could also anticipate, but only as those things applied to now, which was the only time that had any reality for him. The things that had already happened were not memories to be recalled, but what he was now. So were the things that he was going to do. Actually, there was only one thing that he was going to do, and it was the only thing he had ever done: eradicate life. There was plenty of life to eradicate, although none of it in the immediate vicinity had come within reach of him in a while. But as always, he had sensed all those living things. They were moving around, spewing emotions, engaging in activities that produced more emotions for them to spew. If he could move, he would wipe them out. When he could move, he would. At last, he found himself with a live human body close to him. She was only inches away, but he still couldn't move. He stared up at her, unblinking as she moved slowly around him, touching and prodding. She used odd devices on him, handheld tools that made little or no sound but caused changes in the areas of his body, allowing her to penetrate him and cut out pieces, either close to the surface or from somewhere deeper inside. The swarms of internal mechanisms that would have taken care of any injuries remained inert, as paralyzed as he was. But she had mechanisms of her own that she used to repair the damage. They worked as well as his own, but they felt alien and wrong, and as they moved around manipulating his substance, they produced sensations that did not belong with the way he was now, that he had not had since before his final transformation into anti-life. He was feeling pain. When the mechanisms finished, they withdrew from his body and the pain receded. The woman stayed, exuding the offensive, revolting essence of her life into the confined space so that it pressed in on him all over from all directions. Eventually he somehow came to understand that he could not move because she didn't want him to. That was so typical of the living. The living wanted, they needed, and wished for, they desired, and the only way to make them stop was to obliterate them, destroy them, wipe them out. The woman who hovered over him was particularly unrelenting in this area. All he could do was wait for her to change her mind and decide that she wanted him to move. Then he could kill her. The fact that he was what she wanted so inexorably made no difference at all. I did not say that I am refusing to tell the interns to have a half-dozen experimental subjects ready for neurosurgery by this evening, Supreme Allah said patiently. I do not refuse to obey the order. I simply cannot carry it out. Dr. Stein's face, currently displayed in the lower right-hand corner of the flat screen in the phone window, did not change expression. But then to do so would have meant having one in the first place. She didn't, and Supreme Allah knew it wasn't because of some flaw in the video resolution. And I am telling you that this simply cannot be right, Stein told him. There should be more than enough experimental subjects on hand for my requirements. There are not, he replied, maintaining his tone, and it was becoming a real effort to keep it that way, particularly with Omar Wing half pacing, half wandering around his office instead of planting his ass in the chair on the other side of her desk, and keeping it planted. It could have been worse, though. Ramirez Gold could have been there as well, not only helping him wear out the carpet, but muttering under his breath. He looked a silent appeal at Zai, who spread his hands helplessly. I am advised that there will be one mature skin bag tomorrow, Supreme Allah went on. But even pushing the development process to the absolute limit, it will take 3 days to give you another 2. Then, no more for 3 more days. And do my colleagues all agree with you? Dr. Stein coolly asked. I have not asked them, he replied just as coolly. But if you want a second opinion or a third or even a fourth, that's up to you. You are, after all, in charge. Yes, and I know what I'll hear, Stein said. Fortunately, we're not confined to cloned resources. In his peripheral vision, he saw Wing stop pacing. Supreme Allah hesitated. I don't think I understand, he said, wishing that he really didn't. There are over a dozen new arrivals currently quartered under section in the clinic, the woman said, her face still impassive. Is that right? Suprema Law didn't answer. Is that right? Prodded Stein. The soldiers, he said faintly. This is a military project being conducted in a military installation, Stein said, which means clearance for their participation in any capacity is automatic. She paused, and a barely perceptible frown appeared on her face. Please make a note of that if you're having trouble remembering it. She broke the connection. Suprema Law turned away from the screen and started to say something, but Zai was already calling down to the clinic, and Wing had left the room. You broke quarantine early, said Omar Wing, standing at the observation window in Stein's office. On the other side of the glass, Stein looked up from the incision she was making down the center of the creature's skull from a spot just above his forehead to his crown. A viscous substance the color of tar oozed out of the incision and dripped into the curved metal pan attached to the neck brace, holding the creature's head at Stein's preferred angle. I reviewed the data and determined that it was perfectly safe to do so, she said, her voice sounding filtered in the small, tiny speaker. She eyed him dispassionately for a moment before resuming with the incision. Do you have some objection to that? Not to that. She flicked a glance at him but did not stop what she was doing. Wings laughed silently at himself, as if Stein wouldn't pick up on that one. He was making it far too easy, and for no good reason. The woman wasn't going to let anything go just because it was too easy. She never had. Why don't you remove the mask? He asked her. That's not his mask, it's his face. She paused to tap her scalpel on it, with a muffled clang. But it looks like a mask. Why do you suppose that is? I don't know, she said, dabbing at the incision with a thick square of gauze. Any more than I know why you're suddenly so interested in this specimen. She gave him a sideways glance, but didn't let her eyes linger. What would give you the idea that I wasn't interested? Wing said evenly. She was still focused on extending the incision past the crown and down to the back of the neck. If she had any reaction to what he'd said, he saw no sign of it in her profile. Pardon. I misspoke. You'll have to forgive me, Dr. Wing. I'm too busy at the moment to choose my words correctly. Perhaps we should continue this discussion later, when I can. Right. You've scheduled some neurosurgery. I noticed on the schedule, but I didn't realize you had decided to start on that early as well. She flicked him another sideways glance. I'm just taking an advance. Look at my prize specimen here while the other subjects are being prepped. And yes, of course, I've already used the scanner, she added as he started to say something. I've scanned and rescanned. I've even scanned the scans. Now I want to look at his brain matter, personally, with my own eyes. And what are you going to hope to accomplish with the other half-dozen? Stein stopped what she was doing again and straightened up slowly. Actually, I don't know that I'll need to use all 6. She tilted her head to one side, appearing to study him. I want to compare brain configurations and try making a few modifications to the standard specimens. See if that will have any effect on their capacity to tolerate an increase in the level of internal nanos. Why would it? I don't know, Doctor. First we'll see whether it does, then we'll ask why. The impatience that had crept in her voice was starting to show in her face as well. Please check on how preparations are going with the standard subjects for me. Omar, please do that now. It seems to be taking a lot longer to prepare half a dozen specimens than it should, especially considering they're all life-ready and pre-sedated. When he didn't move right away, she made a little shooing motion with the scalpel in her hand. Linda was the grunt on watch in the hallway by the entrance to pre-op. She was a little too gung-ho for Wing's taste, so he had been surprised to find he had developed a real fondness for her in spite of that. He had to admit that the fact she was a classic beauty with a mane of white blonde hair and a build like a Valkyrie might have helped. The hair was pulled back and wound into a neat coil, and she had the same pasty look under the lousy overhead lighting that everyone else did. But it didn't hide the natural beauty of her features any more than the fatigues could hide the fact that she was a bit more voluptuous than the standard grunts of any sex. How are they? Wing asked her. She looked down the 3 inches she had on him in height and gave him a small, sour smile. Sick. Sick? Sick. What do you mean, sick? Sick as in not healthy? The smile turned slightly mischievous. You're starting to get the idea, Doc. Or should I try semaphore? Ah, yes, it's all coming back to me now. How did I ever live without you? Wing gave her a pained look. How many of them are sick? As of 15 minutes ago, all of them, Linda said. All 6? She gave a short laugh. No, all 25. Jesus, Wing breathed. Haddad O'Reilly certainly hadn't wasted any time. Why'd they bring any of them up to pre-op if they were sick? They didn't get sick until the grunts brought them up here. When they called down to the clinic to say they were coming back to exchange them for healthy ones, they got the bad news. Wing nodded. Does it get any better than this? Linda's smile widened. Oh, it gets a lot better. Haddad O'Reilly's up here now, and she's instituted the same dress code for pre-op as she has down in the clinic. Full body condoms are mandatory. No exceptions. Suit up or ship out. Jesus, Wing said again. So who was the poor unlucky bastard who had to call Stein and give her the bad news? Linda's smile faded. As far as I know, Dr. Stein is not yet aware of the situation. Fucking great. Wing ran a hand through his short black hair. I suppose it's too much to hope that you grunts really do have a secret apocalypse-proof shelter a few hundred feet below the complex where you can survive anything. Tell me it isn't, even if you have to lie to me. Linda snapped to attention and looked straight ahead. Sir, this soldier cannot tell a lie, sir. It is not too much to hope that such a shelter exists. It is not too much to hope that we will let you in, sir. She dropped the pose and gave him a wry look. Sorry, Doc. Rank has its privileges, but grunts always get the last laugh. Wing chuckled. I'm surprised someone with your brains hasn't already figured out a way to end up with both. Funny, I was just thinking the same thing about you. Oh, he clapped a hand over his heart. The fatal blow. I'm skewered again. Or still, Linda stepped to one side. Full supply of condoms in the anteroom, if you want to go in and have a look at the situation. Wing nodded and started patting himself down, searching for his swipe card. God damn it. Thought all you scientists made a habit of wearing your keycards on a chain around your neck, Linda said, pointedly not watching him. Only when I can actually remember to put it around my neck, he said, digging in his pockets now. Which is only when I don't forget where I took it off. Of all the absent-minded professors I've ever, befriended, you're my absolute favorite. Linda motioned for him to step back and produced her own card on a retractable line attached to her belt. And this is the last time I'm doing this for you. Today, he added flippantly. She looked over her shoulder at him. You took the word right out of my mouth. Rank has its privileges, he said with a chuckle, as she held the door open for him. Thank you, Private. You're welcome, but I did it for science, sir. She put on a solemn professional soldier's face, but she surprised the hell out of him by giving him a sly, almost lascivious wink, just before she pulled the door shut again. Damn, the day was shaping up to be a very strange one, he thought. If he had just been listening in on that conversation, he'd have sworn there was something more than a little friendly banter going on, even without seeing the wink. What could she have meant, doing something like that? He shook his head and turned to the spray cans stacked on the shelves to his left. Down at the other end, near the entrance to the changing rooms, Haddad O'Reilly had put up a freestanding screen reiterating her conditions for admittance. Wing scanned it quickly and was relieved to see that she wasn't insisting on all-over scrub and total immersion cleansing before the condom was applied. That would save him a bout of skin irritation. Maybe he would get really lucky this time and the condom wouldn't react with his natural body oils and turn him purple, or at least not where it would show. Wing felt self-conscious even before he stepped out of the spray booth. It wasn't the first time he had had to wear a full-body condom, or even the 100th, but it would never be anything but an ordeal for him. He could never decide which was more embarrassing, having to see his colleagues dressed in little more than a heavy coat of paint, or having to be seen by them. As he emerged from the airlock-style portal between the changing room and the patient ward, he looked up and caught sight of one of the overhead cams. They were small and deliberately inconspicuous, so as not to be a distraction, but they were always on. Right, he thought unhappily. Somehow he had completely forgotten the embarrassment that could be provided by a visual record, available to anyone who wanted to look at it. Haddad O'Reilly suddenly materialized next to him. Did Stein send you? She wore a surgical hood rather than the standard fishbowl headpiece. Her eyes looked tired and bloodshot in the transparent portion, but she sounded cheerful. "Afraid so," he grinned at her, knowing she was grinning back. "But if you think I'm going to trot my ass back to her office and give her the bad news, you are so wrong that you will never be right about anything ever again, even if you are." "You quantum topologists really have a way with words," she shrugged. "Doesn't make any difference who tells her. They're all sick." "You mean it doesn't make any difference to them?" Wing said as he followed her past a bank of monitoring equipment. The two nurses watching over the readouts were unrecognizable in full surgical coverage, still uncomfortable. Wing wished he could have said the same, but at least they didn't turn to stare at him openly. There was a single row of 6 beds lined up against one wall, each one occupied. Haddad O'Reilly stopped at the first one and motioned for Wing to stand next to her while she went through a cursory examination of the unconscious man plugged into the monitoring system via a catheter in his neck. "That's where you're 100% wrong," she said, lifting one of the man's eyelids. "What about that?" Wing asked, bewildered. "About the difference it makes to them." She lowered her voice. "This makes a whole goddamn lot of difference to them." She insisted on making him take at least a brief look at all of the soldiers, and he obliged her without protest. Doing so wouldn't tell him anything he couldn't get from the report already in the patient files, but it was preferable to going back to Stein's office right away. He knew that he was going to have to be the one to tell her about this latest inconvenient development. Unless for some bizarre and inexplicable reason she took it into her head to call the clinic herself, or even show up in person. God damn Dr. Stein coming down here to get the bad news about the 6-pack she'd ordered. That would be one killer of a shitstorm to get caught in. Definitely no survivors. But also not likely to happen, given what she had been doing when he had last seen her. She was probably up to her elbows in her new specimen's brain by now. Nothing short of a planetary explosion would have torn her away from that. "I thought all the soldiers were male," he said as he joined Haddad O'Reilly beside the third patient. She shook her head. Was Stein expecting all men? "That was the impression I got," Wing replied. "The new specimen is male. The other subjects were supposed to match." "Only if this new specimen of hers is actually human." Haddad O'Reilly frowned at him. "You think it is?" Wing nodded. "Enhanced human." "Oh, heavily enhanced." Haddad O'Reilly was silent for a long moment as they moved on to the fourth patient. This one was male and seemed to be substantially older than his fellow grunts. "Have you examined any of his tissue yourself?" "No, I've just looked at the scans." "Anything in them to explain how he can be human and carry several times the lethal level of nanos internally?" "Not that I've come across so far." Haddad O'Reilly gave him a look. "And I don't suppose Dr. Stein is talking." "Not to me." "And there you have it," she said. "Nobody knows nothing about nothing, with the possible exception of Gunner. He probably managed to get his head so far up Stein's ass by now that he can hear what she's thinking." In spite of everything, Wing burst into loud, hearty laughter. "I don't know what you're laughing about." Haddad O'Reilly gave him a wry, sideways look through half-closed eyes. "It's not like Gunner's going to share any of his hard-won knowledge with us." "If he were, there wouldn't be anything to laugh about," Wing said. Haddad O'Reilly frowned. "Shit, you're right." They went on to the next bed in no particular hurry. Wing managed a further delay in reporting to Stein by taking time to reread each file, knowing the woman was not going to praise him for being thorough. She wasn't going to think it was a coincidence that all the soldiers had gone down sick at once, and him taking so long to get back to her would only make her believe that he had something to do with it. "Yeah, but what the hell," whispered some distant and more reckless part of his mind, in response to all his common-sense thinking. "What's Stein going to do? Fire you? Have you court-martialed and risk a security breach? The military would never take that chance. If you're stuck, so is she." As it turned out, there was nothing he had to tell Dr. Stein that she didn't already know. Okay, everybody. This is the 80s Slasher Librarian. Even though I already dropped 2 chapters today, I thought it'd be nice just to drop y'all a little bonus chapter. This has been Chapter 13 of Jason X the Experiment. Hope you enjoyed it. Please spread the word. If you haven't done so already, subscribe. Hit the like button for me, please. Drop a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Click the bell so you know when new chapters are being released. And until next time, thanks for listening.